The taste of ash and blood filled Kevin Mitchell's mouth as the steel beam pressed deeper into his chest. Above him, what remained of the 5th floor groaned and cracked, ready to collapse and bury him forever beneath tons of concrete and twisted metal. The heat was unbearable. His bunker gear was melting into his skin, and every breath felt like inhaling broken glass dipped in fire. "Dispatch. This is Engine 47. He tried to speak into his radio, but only a wet gurgle came out. His hands, those hands that had pulled 43 people from burning buildings over 27 years, now trembled uselessly at his sides. He couldn't feel his legs anymore. The pain in his chest was so immense, it had transcended into numbness, and Kevin knew what that meant. He was dying. Through the smoke and flames, he could see the little girl he'd just pushed through the window. Safe. The mother catching her on the ladder truck. Safe. That's what mattered. That's what it had always been about, saving people, even if it meant he'd never leave this building. But there was something else cutting deeper than the steel beam crushing him. A realization sharp as any blade. He was going to die alone. Completely, utterly alone. "Sarah," he whispered, and tears mixed with soot streaked his face. His daughter. God. His daughter. When was the last time he'd actually talked to her? Really talked? 6 months? A year? She'd stopped calling after the last argument, after he'd missed her graduation, after he'd chosen, once again, to pull a double shift instead of showing up for her. The irony wasn't lost on him. Kevin Mitchell, decorated firefighter, hero to hundreds of strangers, was going to die without a single person who truly knew him. Then, through the flames, he saw a small silhouette. A boy. "What the hell? We evacuated everyone. There can't be a kid in here." The child walked through the fire as if it were nothing more than morning mist. No fear, no pain. Just those eyes. Ancient, knowing eyes that didn't belong in a child's face. "You need to get out." Kevin tried to shout, but his voice was barely a rasp. "Buildings coming down." The boy knelt beside him, and impossibly, the flames around them dimmed. The crushing pain in his chest eased just enough to breathe. "I'm exactly where I need to be, Kevin," the boy said, his voice like wind through cathedral bells. "And so are you. Have you ever built walls so high around your heart that you forgot what it felt like to let someone in? If you've ever chosen loneliness over the risk of being hurt again, leave it in the comments. And subscribe, because what Kevin is about to discover might change how you see the price of isolation. Who are you?" Kevin managed to ask, his mind struggling to process the impossible scene before him. "My name is Daniel," the boy said simply. "I come to those who are at the edge, those who have something they need to say before they cross over. I'm not... The rescue team will..." Kevin started, clinging to the protocol that had governed his life for decades. "Captain Myers is 3 blocks away," Daniel interrupted gently. "The building will collapse in 7 minutes. They won't reach you in time. Your aorta is torn, Kevin. You're bleeding internally. You can feel it, can't you?" It was true. Kevin could feel his life pumping away into the cavern of his body with each heartbeat. The cold was spreading from his extremities inward, the way it always did. "I don't understand," Kevin whispered. "Why are you here? Why aren't you burning?" Daniel smiled, and there was something both heartbreaking and comforting in that expression. "Because I'm not really here, Kevin. Not the way you think. I'm in between, just like you are right now. And I'm here because you've been dying for 20 years. This," he gestured to the collapsed building around them, "is just your body finally catching up to your heart." The words hit Kevin harder than the beam that was crushing him. 20 years ago, Daniel continued. March 15th, 2004. The warehouse fire on Riverside. You want to talk about it? Kevin's eyes widened in recognition and pain. "Lisa," he breathed, and the name was a prayer and a curse all at once. Daniel nodded slowly, as if he'd known all along. Tell me what happened, Kevin. Tell me what you've never told anyone." And Kevin spoke. For the first time in 20 years, the words came pouring out like poison from a lanced wound. "It was supposed to be a routine call," he began, his voice shaking. "Warehouse fire, probably electrical. Lisa was home with Sarah. Our daughter was only 4 years old. I remember kissing them both goodbye that morning. Lisa was making pancakes. Sarah had syrup all over her face. It was perfect." Daniel listened in silence, his small hand resting near Kevin's, not touching but offering a presence that somehow made the pain bearable. "We got the call at 2 p.m. Old warehouse, fully involved when we arrived. But there was a problem." Kevin's voice cracked. "The building next door. It was a small apartment complex. The fire was spreading fast. We had to make a choice: contain the warehouse fire or evacuate the apartments." "What did you choose?" Daniel asked, though he seemed to already know. "I chose the apartments. As captain, it was my call. We pulled 17 people out. Families, kids, elderly folks who couldn't move fast. We saved them all." Kevin's face contorted with an emotion that went beyond physical pain. "But while we were doing that, the warehouse fire spread. It jumped 2 blocks in 30 minutes. High winds, old buildings, everything was tinder." He paused, gasping for air. "It reached our neighborhood, our house. Lisa. She was there with Sarah. She got Sarah out, carried her to the street. But our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an 80-year-old widow, she was trapped on the 2nd floor of her house." Tears streamed down Kevin's face now. "Lisa gave Sarah to another neighbor, told her to run. And then my wife, my beautiful wife, who wasn't a firefighter, who had no training, no gear. She ran into Mrs. Patterson's burning house to save her." "What happened?" Daniel asked softly. "The floor collapsed." Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. "Both of them fell into the basement. By the time I got there, they were both gone. Lisa and Mrs. Patterson, dead because I wasn't there. Dead because I chose to save 17 strangers instead of being home to protect my own family." The words hung in the smoky air like an accusation. "Sarah was standing on the sidewalk when I arrived. 4 years old, covered in soot, crying for her mommy. And when she saw me in my gear, she looked at me like I was supposed to fix it, like Daddy the firefighter could save everyone." Kevin sobbed. "But I couldn't save the one person who mattered most. I couldn't save her mother." Daniel remained silent for a moment, letting Kevin's confession settle in the burning air around them. "What did you do after that?" the boy finally asked. "I ran," Kevin admitted, his voice hollow. "Not physically. I stayed in the same house, raised Sarah, showed up to every meal. But emotionally, I built walls. Thick, impenetrable walls. Because if I never let anyone get close again, I'd never have to feel that kind of pain again." "Tell me about Sarah," Daniel prompted. "She needed me." Kevin's voice broke. "God, she needed me so much. She was 4 years old and her mother was gone. She'd wake up screaming every night. She'd cling to me, begging me not to leave for work. And I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at her, I saw Lisa. Every smile, every laugh reminded me of what I'd lost." He closed his eyes against the memory. "So I threw myself into work. Extra shifts, volunteer trainings, anything to avoid being home. I told myself I was doing it for us, to provide for her, to make sure we'd be secure. But that was bullshit. I was running. I was hiding behind the job because saving strangers was easier than facing my own daughter." "How did she react?" Daniel asked. "At first, she tried so hard," Kevin said, his voice cracking. "She'd draw pictures for me, leave notes on my pillow. 'Daddy, I miss you.' She'd wait up past midnight on my shift days, just to say goodnight. And every single time I'd tell her, 'Not now, sweetheart, Daddy's tired. We'll talk tomorrow.'" The self-loathing in Kevin's voice was palpable. "Tomorrow never came, did it?" Daniel observed gently. Never, Kevin confirmed. By the time she was 10, she stopped trying, stopped waiting up, stopped leaving notes. My parents helped raise her. They moved in after Lisa died. Sarah had grandmother and grandfather, but her father was a ghost who occasionally ate dinner at the same table. He paused, struggling with the next words. She'd have school events, plays, recitals, parent-teacher conferences. I'd promise to go. I'd swear this time would be different. And every single time I'd get called in for a shift. Sometimes it was real. Sometimes I volunteered for the shift because it was easier than sitting in an elementary school auditorium watching my daughter perform without her mother there. Did she ever confront you? Daniel asked. Once, Kevin said, the memory clearly painful. She was 16. I missed her birthday dinner because of a mandatory training. When I got home at midnight, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, just sitting there in the dark. His voice trembled as he continued. She looked at me with these eyes, Lisa's eyes, and said, "You know what I wished for when I blew out my candles, Dad. I wished that you loved me as much as you love your job. I wished that I was worth saving too." Kevin let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. I told her she was being dramatic, that she didn't understand the importance of what I did, that I was saving lives. And you know what she said? She said, "You save everyone except the people who actually love you." Was she right? Daniel asked. She was completely right, Kevin admitted. I became addicted to being a hero, to strangers thanking me, to medals and commendations, to news stories calling me brave. Because that was easy. That was simple. Save people, get praise, move on to the next fire. No messy emotions, no complex relationships, no risk of losing someone I loved, because you can't lose what you never let yourself have. Tell me about Stephen, Daniel said, and Kevin's eyes widened in surprise. How do you know about Stephen? I know everything that weighs on your heart, Kevin, and Stephen weighs heavy. Kevin nodded slowly, fresh tears forming. Stephen Hayes, my partner for 12 years. We went through everything together. Building collapses, chemical fires, car accidents. He was my best friend, maybe my only real friend. What happened to him? Daniel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. 3 years ago, he had a heart attack. Collapsed during a training exercise. We rushed him to the hospital. The doctor said it was serious but treatable. He'd need to take it easy, maybe take early retirement, but he'd be okay. Kevin's voice hardened with self-recrimination. He asked me to visit, called me from his hospital bed, said he was scared, that he needed his friend, and I showed up once, stayed for 20 minutes, made an excuse about needing to get back to the station. And then I just stopped going. Why? Daniel pressed gently. Because he reminded me of mortality, Kevin confessed. Because if Stephen, strong, healthy Stephen, could almost die, then what did that say about me? About how I'd been living? He wanted to talk about feelings, about fears, about what really mattered, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't risk caring that much about someone again. He paused, his breathing becoming more labored. Stephen retired 6 months later, moved to Arizona to be near his daughter. He sent me cards, emails, invitations to visit. I never responded, just like I never responded to Sarah's calls, just like I never responded to anyone who tried to get past these walls I built. And Sarah? Daniel asked. Where is she now? Kevin closed his eyes, and more tears escaped. She's 24 now, lives in Boston. She's a social worker, helping kids who lost their parents. The irony isn't lost on me. She became everything I couldn't be. Emotionally present, caring, willing to sit with people in their pain. When's the last time you spoke to her? Daniel asked. 14 months ago, Kevin whispered. She called to tell me she was engaged. I was in the middle of inventory at the station. I told her I'd call her back. I never did. She sent me a wedding invitation 8 months ago. I didn't RSVP. I didn't go. I didn't even send a gift. My only daughter got married, and I wasn't there. The weight of that admission seemed to crush him more than the steel beam on his chest. "Why?" Daniel asked simply. "Because I didn't know how to face her," Kevin sobbed. "Because every time I thought about calling, I'd remember that 4-year-old girl crying for her mommy. I'd remember every promise I broke, every event I missed, every time I chose work over her. How could I show up to her wedding after all that? How could I sit there and pretend to be a proud father when I'd barely been a father at all?" "So you chose nothing," Daniel observed. "You chose to stay behind your walls where it was safe and lonely, rather than risk being hurt or rejected." "Yes," Kevin admitted, his voice breaking completely. "And now I'm going to die, and she doesn't even know. She doesn't know if I loved her. She doesn't know that every single day I thought about calling. She doesn't know that I'm proud of her, that I followed her life through Facebook like some creepy stalker because I was too much of a coward to actually be part of it." Daniel reached out and placed his hand on Kevin's shoulder. Warmth spread through Kevin's broken body, not the burning heat of the flames, but something else, something like grace. "Look," the boy whispered. And Kevin saw. In the smoke and flames, images appeared like ghosts. Sarah as a child, waiting by the window for a father who never came home on time. Sarah as a teenager, eating birthday cake alone while he worked a double shift. Sarah in a white wedding dress, looking at the empty seat where her father should have been, trying not to cry. "She thinks you don't love her," Daniel said softly. "She thinks the job was always more important, that saving strangers meant more than being her dad." "That's not true," Kevin gasped. "I love her more than anything. I didn't know how to show it without the fear eating me alive." "The fear of losing her like you lost Lisa?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Kevin admitted. "If I never got close, I'd never have to feel that pain again. But instead, I lost her anyway. I lost 20 years with my daughter because I was too afraid to risk my heart." The image shifted. Stephen in a hospital bed in Arizona, alone, holding an unopened card from Kevin. Then Stephen's funeral 6 months ago, with Kevin's name listed in the obituary as survived by his partner of 12 years, even though Kevin never went, never said goodbye. "He died thinking you didn't care," Daniel said. "Not cruel, just truthful. He died alone, wondering what he did to make his best friend abandon him." Kevin's sobs were ragged now, torn from somewhere deep in his soul. "And if you die here today," Daniel continued, "Sarah will spend the rest of her life wondering the same thing. She'll blame herself. She'll think she wasn't enough, that she didn't matter." "No," Kevin whispered desperately. "No, she has to know. She has to know that it wasn't her, that she was always enough, that I was the broken one." Daniel looked at Kevin with those ancient, knowing eyes. "Your body is failing, Kevin. The building will collapse in 2 minutes. But you have a choice. 2 paths stretch before you." The boy gestured into the flames. "In one path, you let go now. You die a hero. They'll give you a medal, a funeral with full honors. The department will retire your badge number. Sarah will come. She'll cry at your grave. But she'll never know the truth. She'll carry the weight of thinking her father didn't love her for the rest of her life." Then he gestured in another direction. "In the other path, you fight. You hold on to every breath. You survive this. But Kevin, you won't be the same. Your legs are crushed beyond repair. You'll never fight fires again. The job that's been your shield, your excuse, your identity for 27 years, it's over. You'll be forced to face all those feelings you've been running from. You'll have to learn how to be vulnerable, how to let people in, how to be a father instead of a hero." Daniel leaned closer. "But you'll have the chance to look Sarah in the eyes and tell her the truth. You'll have the chance to be present for the life you missed, to meet your son-in-law, to be there when she has kids of her own, to finally stop running." "That one," Kevin said without hesitation, his voice suddenly strong. "I want that path. I don't care about the medals or the job. I don't care about my pride. I just want the chance to tell my daughter that I love her, that I've always loved her, that I'm sorry for all the years I wasted being afraid." Daniel smiled, and in that smile was something divine. "Then fight, Kevin Mitchell. Fight for every breath. And when you wake up, keep fighting. Fight to tear down those walls. Fight to be vulnerable. Fight to be the father Sarah deserves, even if it terrifies you." "I will," Kevin promised. "I swear to God, I will." The rescue team found Kevin Mitchell with no pulse, clinically dead for 6 minutes. But at Boston Medical Center, against every medical prediction, his heart started beating again. He woke up 3 weeks later, paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors called it a miracle that he'd survived it all. The department wanted to give him a Medal of Valor. The first thing Kevin did was ask for his phone. "I need to call my daughter," he told the nurse, his voice urgent. "Please, I need to call Sarah." The call went to voicemail. Sarah's voice, professional and distant. "You've reached Sarah Mitchell. Please leave a message." Kevin took a shaky breath. "Sarah, it's Dad. I'm in the hospital. There was a fire and I almost died. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I need to tell you something I should have said 20 years ago." His voice broke, but he pushed through. "I love you. I have always loved you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for every time I chose work over you, for every promise I broke, for missing your wedding, for missing your whole damn life. You deserved so much better than the father I was." Tears streamed down his face. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to call back. But I need you to know that it was never about you not being enough. You were always enough. You were everything. I was just too broken and too scared to show you. I'm done running now, baby girl. If you'll give me a chance, I want to try to be the father I should have been. I want to meet your husband. I want to be in your life. But if you're done with me, I understand. Just know that you were loved. Always." He hung up, heart pounding, terrified she'd never respond. 3 hours later, his hospital room door opened. Sarah stood there, tears streaming down her face, older and more beautiful than the pictures he'd stalked on Facebook. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, 20 years of pain and loss between them. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," Kevin said, not making excuses. "You broke my heart over and over," she continued, her voice shaking. "I know," he repeated. "I needed you, and you were never there," Sarah said, taking a step closer. "I know," Kevin said again, tears falling freely now. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah crossed the room and, to Kevin's shock, wrapped her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered fiercely. "Don't ever shut me out again. If you're going to be in my life, you're going to actually be in my life. No more hiding. No more walls. Deal?" "Deal," Kevin promised, holding his daughter for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever without fear between them. "I promise." 6 months later, Kevin sat in a wheelchair at a park in Boston, watching Sarah push her 2-year-old daughter, his granddaughter, on a swing. Sarah's husband, Michael, stood beside Kevin, and they talked, really talked, about life, about fears, about being men who were learning how to be vulnerable. Kevin would never fight fires again. His career was over. His identity as the hero was gone. But he'd gained something infinitely more valuable. He'd gained his daughter back.
He'd learned how to let people in. He'd learned that the bravest thing he could do wasn't running into burning buildings. It was tearing down the walls around his heart and letting himself be loved. And sometimes, in quiet moments, he'd think about a boy with ancient eyes who'd given him a second chance in the middle of flames and collapsing steel.
Somewhere in Boston, that boy watched from the shadows, smiled, and then walked toward the next person who needed to choose between dying alone or living vulnerable. Because some angels don't have wings. Some just have infinite patience for those who've forgotten that the greatest courage isn't in the grand gestures of heroism, it's in the terrifying simplicity of saying, "I love you," and meaning it enough to stick around. Because in the end, we don't die when our hearts stop beating. We die when we stop letting people into our hearts while we're still alive. Every wall we build to protect ourselves from pain becomes a prison that keeps out love. And the saddest tragedy isn't dying in a burning building. It's living your whole life in an emotional one, surrounded by people who love you but can never reach you through the walls you've built. But while there's breath in your lungs and blood in your veins, it's never too late to choose connection over isolation, to choose vulnerability over safety, to tear down the walls and risk being hurt, because that's the only way to truly be alive. Even if, especially if, it terrifies you.